Exploring the deep sea using free and open source data. EX 1806 Dive 4, the Blake Escarpment. The Blake Escarpment is a very rugged section of the continental slope of the southeastern United States that is ecologically significant but relatively unexplored. In 2018, the NOAA Ship Okeanos Explorer surveyed a section of the Blake Escarpment 220 miles offshore of South Carolina using MultiBeam sonars, providing a window to the deep. Deep sea coral ecologists and geologists explored these diverse habitats and complex geoforms using a remotely operated vehicle to document the living communities. The NOAA Ship Okeanos Explorer deployed the ROV Deep Discoverer to collect high-definition videos, biological and geological samples, and water chemistry data. The ROV began the transect at the base of the escarpment. This flat and featureless abyss is like a desert, with only small foraging invertebrates and scavenging eels among the sands. As the ROV headed west, erratic boulders and small outcrops became visible. These boulders are like an oasis, providing a habitat where deep-sea corals and sponges can survive. While the ROV was diving, the Okeanos Explorer broadcasted the ROV video live to scientists and students around the world. These experts helped decide which samples were worth collecting and identify species of marine life, like this cutthroat eel. This was a unique opportunity to observe these deep-sea communities in real time, without even leaving the classroom. As the ROV continues west towards the slopes of the escarpment, the boulders became more numerous and the soft sediment veneer gives way to more exposed hard substrate. About 1 hour into the dive, the scattered outcrops and boulders transitioned into large black slabs of rock. Iron manganese precipitates encrust these slabs from the saturated seawater over thousands of years. Scientists are just starting to understand the ecological interactions that occur on these hard-bottom habitats, like this squat lobster living on a branch of dead bamboo coral. An hour and a half into the dive, the Deep Discoverer continues to move up a steadily increasing slope towards the base of the escarpment. The rocky slopes transition into a terraced stair-step formation. This interesting geoform was not detected in the bathymetry. Perched on top of one of the terraces with foot-like fins was this deep-sea anglerfish that is known for using a chemosynthetic lure to attract prey. Shrimp are found in almost every environment of the ocean, from the tropics to the poles, and are an important link in the marine food web. The scientists began observing large colonies of living stony corals along the terraces. These deep-sea corals are ecologically important foundational animals that build habitat for other organisms. Even dead corals can still provide a refuge or a foundation for living organisms, like this beautiful yellow-colored zoanthid, which has grown over its deceased neighbor. But there were some areas of the seafloor that were covered with the rubble of stony corals and devoid of life. It is not exactly known when or how these deep-sea communities perished. Once the ROV reached the base of the escarpment, new faunal communities started occurring. This cusk eel was observed using an overhanging ledge as a habitat. As the ROV began ascending the escarpment, the terraced stair steps became steeper. Collapsed sections of the terrace were seen more frequently as the slopes became more vertical. One of the new discoveries of this dive was a large candelabra-like species of bamboo coral, which is still being described. The HD video will help aid the taxonomic classification. After 3 hours into the dive, the ROV arrived at a large vertical wall that was identified by the MultiBeam sonar from the previous expedition. There, the scientists filmed a threadfin rockling, which had never been observed south of Cape Hatteras, North Carolina, thus expanding the fish's known range. Finally, at the top of the wall, the ecologists were able to observe how the coral communities became more diverse and had greater biomass than at the base of the wall. Species interactions, like this brittle star living on a precious coral, were observed, although the relationship is not fully understood. Many different species of sponge that have yet to be fully described were also observed at the top of the wall, filtering nutrients from the strong currents that flow along the Blake Escarpment. As the ROV transited north along the Blake Escarpment, high densities of these filter-feeding invertebrates were observed clinging to the very edge or underneath large overhangs. Over the course of millennia, these ledges will give way and tumble down the escarpment to the base of the slope, resulting in the large boulders and slabs seen earlier in the dive. It is important to understand how the complex geomorphology and the fragile biological communities are distributed across the seafloor, so natural resource managers can make decisions on protecting fisheries and their habitats. As the dive came to an end, the scientist on land requested the ROV team get one last-minute biological sample of this unidentified sponge using the manipulator arm. With the collection bins full of rocks and living samples, the Deep Discoverer prepares for its final ascent. The EX-1806 dive was broadcasted live on the NOAA Okeanos Explorer's website on June 17, 2018. Scientists were able to annotate the ROV dive and update their records after further research using the platform called SeaTube by Ocean Network Canada. This dive and several other Okeanos Explorer missions are providing ecologists with ground validation data that can help generate benthic habitat maps, identify important ecotones, and even aid models to predict the seafloor types of unexplored areas. These precious ecosystems are threatened by climate change, damage from commercial fisheries, and offshore energy industries. Many of these fragile coral communities could disappear before they are even documented. With more funding for ocean exploration and free open source platforms like SeaTube, QGIS, and Google Earth, we can continue to create ways to visualize deep sea exploration that will evoke the need for marine conservation and inspire the next generation of marine scientists.